President Trump says tariffs could take over as the U.S. government's main source of revenue, predicting that the U.S. will generate so much moolah, so much cash, we could just eliminate the income tax.
Here's what the president, Rachel Campos Duffy, said to Rachel Campos Duffy on Fox Noticias.
Las aranceles van a reemplazar el income tax.
You know, you're the only one that's asked me that. Oh, I deal with all these big financial geniuses. Nobody ever. There is a chance that the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace. You know, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913, the tariffs were the only form of money. And that's when our nation was relatively the richest. We were the richest.
But let's look at these numbers. The math ain't mathin'. The highest estimate for revenue from the tariffs comes from Penn Wharton that we could find. $4.6 trillion in tariff revenue over 10 years. On the lower end, the Tax Foundation puts it closer to $2.2 trillion with a slower economy.
Joining us now is House Financial Services Committee member, Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. What about this idea? Can tariffs take over the revenue portion of what the IRS needs, that our government needs, to make up the difference and get rid of the income tax for so many Americans?
You know, Jason, it's an honor to join you and Dagan. Thank you. I don't think that by itself will fund our federal government. We have a hard time funding our federal government with the current revenue levels. Now, the great thing is DOGE is finding ways for us to spend way less money, and lots of us have been fighting for that for years. So hopefully we'll spend less money. But the reality is tariff revenue by itself probably won't be able to fund anything close to our current federal government. But there are alternatives like the fair tax that would be consumption oriented. And you could repeal the 16th Amendment, the income tax. And the biggest reason to hate the income tax is the invasion of privacy, where it collects all this information about you. So as we celebrate tax day, or grieve about tax day, maybe more appropriately, the biggest thing is the massive sweep of privacy data that's collected by the IRS.
Well, and Congressman, I wasn't trying to insult the President of the United States, but what I was getting at is that based on the estimates of how much tariff revenue would come in, according to what we know right now, we would need more than 5 times the highest estimate over a decade to come up with what we bring in now from the individual income tax. Or if you look at the total imports of goods, we would have to tariff every dollar of imported goods at 73% to come up with what we collect from the individual income tax right now, because that, in essence, the numbers just don't add up right now. However, you said consumption tax, and that discourages consumption and would get rid of the income tax, encourage work, which is something we can all get behind.
Yeah, I think that's the alternative. You look at tariff. I mean, I had a very amusing conversation with the president recently in the Oval Office. He was talking about tariffs, and I was fortunate to be able to work on trade as a new member of Congress, post being in manufacturing and working on USMCA. So we often talk about trade and the impact here in Ohio. And he's like, you know, I did have to clarify that tariff's not my favorite word. There's words like God and America and Melania, but tariff, what a beautiful word. You're not going to change Donald Trump's mind about tariffs.
Yep.
He still loves them. And they will generate significant revenue. It's worth modeling the kind of revenue they will take. But to completely eliminate the income tax, it'll probably take something along the lines of a fair tax. When you blend those together, we really could have a much more effective, it would still be a very progressive tax system, because who's stunned to learn that wealthy people spend more money on consumption than people that are living at the poverty level. Yeah. And the reality is you exempt certain categories like, you know, food, clothing, and shelter, and for primary residents, and you could still have a functional consumption-oriented tax. It'd be great to repeal the 16th Amendment and defend freedom with less of an invasion of privacy.
Now, Congressman, one of the other favorite words of the president is deportation, but there was a bit of a setback, a federal judge blocking his move to strip legal status from over 500,000 Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan nationals admitted to the United States under Biden's controversial parole program. The Trump team calling the ruling, quote, pure lawless tyranny. What's your take on who's running this country? Is it the president or are these federal judges?
Well, the federal judges are fighting there, and Norm Eisen and others are working to create this legal strategy because they know they don't have the executive branch, they know they don't have the legislative branch, so they're trying to use every foothold they can in the judiciary, and that's overwhelmingly the district courts. They try to get as many injunctions as possible, and this is really the same fight where they're fighting for this citizen of El Salvador who was returned to El Salvador. What they want in every case, including this Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, temporary protective status, temporary parolee status where they could come to the United States and work legally. If Joe Biden could bring it into this world with an executive order, how is it that Donald Trump can't end it with executive order? And they don't just want to say, well, you have to use some kind of Administrative Procedures Act, or you have to, give some form of adjudication. They literally are trying to mandate that it goes on a case-by-case basis. And this is exactly what the left wants. They want a case-by-case basis for millions of people. So there's no way to reverse an invasion of millions of people one case at a time. And they just want to run out the clock so that if they ever get back in power, they can resume the invasion. And that's what we have to win in court. And frankly, in the meantime, that's why the administration is right to just keep doing what they're doing. That is the mandate of this last election. That if you came here legally, you're welcome to stay. But if you're here illegally, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Congressman, it was great to see you, sir.